Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Super Paranormal Chronicles. I am your host, Lee. How could you forget this wonderful British person? And tonight, I am delighted, more than delighted, I'm over the moon to have Stephanie Bingham with me. Stephanie is a historian, paranormal researcher, and psychic. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's the pleasure's all mine. You're coming onto my show, so I love people like you coming on to and talking about the weather and
Yeah,
stuff
absolutely.
and
All the weather.
Kentucky Fried Chicken. But let's not go there. Let's not go there. Okay, so like I said, you're a historian, you're a paranormal researcher, and you're a psychic. But what I'd like to do is to go to the very beginning of your life, not when you were born, a little couple of years after that.
Mhm.
But how did your life start within the paranormal world, shall we say? Hi, Kat.
This is Amarna. She apparently wanted to say hi.
Hi.
My first experience with the paranormal actually happened when I was very young. I was still basically a toddler. I was about 2.5 or so years old, and I was staying at my grandparents' house after there'd been a death in the family. You know, little kid, something like that happens, you don't really understand what was going on. I had no idea. My cat is being obnoxious. My
It's
mother had
fine.
my mother had put me down for a nap in a playpen. So I was in a room by myself, didn't think anything of it. Little kid, it is just what it is. And while I was napping, this man came in the room and he was sitting on the edge of the bed next to the playpen and he was being obnoxious cat. He was just talking to me and I didn't really think anything of it. And when my mom came and got me up later, she was like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, the man came in the window." And she was like, "What? I'm sorry?" And so I described this man, and she kind of, nodded and just sent me on my way. And I didn't think anything of it. And this kept happening, where I kept seeing this man who would come in while I was napping, generally come in through the window, sit on the bed next to me, and he was just chatting. Like there was nothing strange about it to me at the time. And eventually, mom got suspicious on some level because of what the man was telling me. And she got this big group family photo and she's like, "Who is it you're talking to? Like, is the person you're talking to in this picture?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's that one." That's all she ever said. The man
Wow.
who had died was the man in the picture. She never told me that. I was well into middle school before I realized that this man was dead.
Wow.
So that was my first sort of encounter with the paranormal, but I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't know that there was anything strange going on. It was just this family member who wants to come in, sit down, chat, and go on about the day. It was just normal to me.
Yeah. And I get so envious of people that have those kind of stories because my childhood was pretty normal and boring.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I was an adult where I had my first paranormal experience. So to hear all these stories about, oh, when I was a child, this happened, it's like, okay, you can stop now. I don't want to know. So when you mentioned that it was a few years later that you realized that this guy was dead. So how did it kind of materialize and how did your road open up to what you are now?
So it wasn't just him. I saw other spirits when I was younger. And it took me a while and meeting another kid who could also see things like I did to really understand what was going on. There were two ghosts in my childhood home who they were kids. It was an older girl and a little boy, her little brother. And they were always around to play. And I remember going out to play with these kids and I didn't really think anything of it. They were afraid of their grandfather who, they lived with. And I didn't think anything of it until the other kids start asking, "Who are you talking about? I don't remember this person." And until I found someone else who was quirky like me, that I really sort of understood. Like, he understood it at the time. Like, he hadn't been nearly as oblivious to the fact as I was. But yeah, because he could see the same things I did, things that nobody else or people that nobody else could see. It just sort of made sense at that point, and my world kind of crashed in on itself for a little while because This had all been normal until it wasn't.
Yeah, and that's what I find really interesting, the fact that people go, I considered it normal and until I was told it wasn't.
Yes.
So what kind of age did you kind of understand what abilities you had and kind of accepted them and then moved forward?
I was to actually accept them, you're actually looking probably late middle school, early high school before that actually took place. There were a couple of good years in there where I don't know that I was necessarily in denial, but I was just confused. I was very, very confused and I could not work through it. Like I could not wrap my brain around the fact that not everybody else was seeing the same things I was. And it wasn't like I was seeing crazy things most of the time. It was people that had passed, people that were connected to people that were connected to locations. And these things were telling me their stories, telling me what happened, or just conveying the normal messages. I'm happy, I'm safe, tell them I love them, that sort of thing. The very normal, there was nothing really out of the ordinary, except for the ones that were vaguely terrifying. And I think that sort of really was the juxtaposition for me because for years I had had this entity that walked down the hallway towards my bedroom, big, heavy booted feet walking down the hallway slowly, and I would hear it at night. And for years, that's all it was. I would just hear the footsteps down the hallway towards the bedroom. And eventually, as I started to understand that I was dealing with a ghost, he would be in the doorway. Like you could see him in the doorway. But it took years to get to that point. And I don't know why I did not put two and two together earlier, but my kid brain, it just was, you know?
Yeah. Were you the first person in your family to kind of have these abilities? Because you mentioned about your mother, with the photograph and which one was it? But did she kind of understand what was happening to you at that time, and did she have her own abilities?
If you ask her, she would say no. She would say she doesn't have any abilities. I have seen some things that
Uh-uh.
would make me question that a great deal. But actually, that very first encounter I had with the dead relative, he came to my grandfather on the same night. And he sat and talked to my grandfather for a while as well. And I think that's how she knew exactly who it was because he visited not only me, but my grandfather on the same night.
Right. So I asked this to all the people that have your kind of abilities. Some people can see, some people can hear, some people can smell, some people can sense, some people draw. What is your, I don't want to say it, but what's your speciality of communicating?
When I was very little, I could not tell the difference between the living and the dead. They looked solid to me. It took years and years for me to be able to be in a crowd and be able to pick out this one's alive and this one isn't. So for me, it is a very visual thing, but after practice, I've been able to sort of shift the way I look, if that makes any sort of sense. So it's easier
Yeah,
for me, but I see them and I hear them as a secondary, if you want to look at it that way.
yeah,
But seeing is
because
the big one.
yeah, I know a lot of people can kind of relate to like the TV show Ghost Whisperer and the movie Ghost. And there's one part in the movie Ghost where he walks into the room. There's loads of people, and from the person watching the movie, you don't know straight away who's alive and who's dead until they get up and walk out the walls.
Mhm.
So is that the kind of thing how you experienced it to start off with?
Very much so. I could be in a room and I did not know who was who, what was what. I got to the point, especially in high school, where I would not respond to anybody that I did not actively know. If you were calling my name in a crowd, I would not turn around until I saw somebody else react to you. Like it was that bad at certain points. Like it was just, were you alive or were you not? I don't know.
Yeah, and yeah, sometimes the kind of giveaway is the clothes that they're wearing.
It
Yeah,
can
that
be.
yeah. Oh, yeah, the wearing medieval clothing. Okay, that's a bit of a giveaway, unless you're in some sort of pageant
Hmm.
that people are all dressed up. But one thing that I like to ask as well, and I've completely forgotten what I was going to say to you. So I'm going to come back to that one in a second.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I thought I'd had it on the tip of my tongue and it just like went. Oh yes, here we go. I remembered. I was talking to one medium last year who was saying that she was able to switch on and switch off like a radio station or like a radio, so to speak. So if she wants to connect, she can. But if she doesn't, like she's going in the shower or she's going to the local store and she wants to switch off, she can do that. So can you kind of do that kind of thing as well?
I don't think of it so much as switching on and switching off, but I got very good at ignoring them. And I find if I don't acknowledge them, it's harder for them to acknowledge me. So, like, if I want to go out and go about my business, I can, but there's always like a cue for me. If I'm getting ready to go out on an investigation, going out on a hunt, going out on any sort of thing like that, I will, get dressed. You're going to put on a certain color of lipstick. You're going to do all the things that signal, okay, I'm okay with this right now. But if I'm sitting down to do, homework or something, don't mess with me. And it's just really sort of ignoring more so than actually turning on and off for me.
And I can kind of imagine that you're there doing your own work, and there's somebody over there going like, "Is it time yet? Can I talk to you right now?"
Mhm.
And I do get envious about people like yourself that are able to see spirits. I've been told that I'm sensitive, and tomorrow night I'm speaking to another medium friend of mine. She went, "Me and you need to talk,"
Mhm.
and I'm going to explain why because it's kind of blew my mind a little bit. A couple of weeks ago, I went on an investigation, and one of my colleagues wanted to use the mirror scrying, I believe,
Yep. Mhm.
and we had cameras, and it was in a dark location, and maybe something happened in the mirror, but it was dark. There were shadows. I'm quite a skeptical person, but I do have an open mind. So I want somebody else to do exactly the same experiment to see what they do. And I'm talking to this girl on Sunday night, and she went, "Have you been scrying recently?" And I'm like, "What?" And she lives in Cleveland, and
Okay.
I'm like, what? Why? So, and she goes, "Yeah, me and you need to have a chat."
Mhm.
Okay. I said, "Is this a mother telling me off chat, or is it a good chat?" She, "Oh no, it's a good chat. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." So that's tomorrow night. So that's going to be interesting. So once you kind of understood these abilities that you had, did you kind of go and search for somebody to learn and to grow, or and to nurture, or did you just go, I'm by myself, I'm going to crack on?
I am a very independent person. I'm an only child. I was a very bookish child. So my first thought was to go to the books. I wanted to know the context, I wanted to know the history, I wanted to know that I wasn't alone and I wasn't the first person to deal with this. So spiritualism, voodoo, any sort of esoteric thing that dealt with ghosts. I was voracious, and all of that was what I was digging into. I didn't have a teacher per se, as I had books, all the books.
And it's cool that you say that because, as you can see, I have books and I've got a
Yeah,
really big book
I've
on
got that book
ghosts. Have you? I
too.
I actually I actually went to a bookstore last year, and it was like a junk store kind of thing, and I saw it and I went, I need that book. I
Mhm,
got no idea what was inside it. I just went, I need to have that book on my bookcase because
mhm.
it so stands out. And I went, I think I've looked at it twice,
That's
but it's
fair.
like it's there. So once you started reading the books, did your mindset kind of change to go, okay, I'm not like normal people. I can do and see something that other people can't. Did you kind of get that impression once you started reading?
In my mind, I've always been normal, so the ghosts were normal to me, so the idea of not seeing them sort of weirds me out to some extent, but I didn't really think of it as normal or not normal, what I could do. It was just what it is. I was arming myself with information to understand it, but to me, it only mattered that I understood it and I could function with it because I was very aware that there were things that were a little less generous, a little less gentle than some of the spirits I'd grown up with. So I wanted to make sure that when and if those crossed my path again, I had context and an idea of what to do.
And you mentioned earlier about some of the not nice experiences, and if it's not too like distressing or upsetting, can you mention a kind of example of what you encountered?
Oh, well, everybody will, like, I get the question a lot, what's your scariest ghost encounter? And there's one clear answer to my mind, and then there is the answer that people want from me.
Yeah.
So, to give you an idea of that dichotomy to me, I was reading a book late one night and I had a ghost crawl in bed beside me and it wrapped its arm around me. That is the most terrifying incident I've ever had with a spirit. I lost my mind. I was petrified. I went and sat in the bathtub so I could not feel if something sat down next to me. I was terrified. And everybody's like, "Oh, that's not that scary." And I'm like, "Oh, but it was. You had to be there, but it was terrifying."
Yeah.
But the incident that people always come back to with me happened when I was in college. I had this roommate at the time who also had abilities. And her mother had gone on a mission trip and had ministered to a group that didn't want to be ministered to, and then took a gift from them and brought back this gift, and strange things started happening at their house. My roommate, being the good daughter that she is, brought that gift back to our dorm room. She put it under my bed without telling me. It was college, things happen.
Yeah.
And strange things started happening on campus. I had 3 different friends come up to me in the course of about a week to tell me that they were having these very strange dreams. And I was like, "Oh, that's odd, but dreams are not my forte. I don't know how to interpret them. That's not my bag." But each of them told me about this little girl who was smiling down at them. And the first time I heard it, I was like, "Okay." And the second time I was like, "That's not good." And the third time I was like, "This is bad. Don't know what's going on, but something bad is happening here." So I'm made the decision I'm going to go to the library this weekend because I'm a bookish kid and try and figure out if there's anything about this. And I don't make it to the library that weekend. It's a Saturday. I'm doing what all college kids are doing on Saturday. I'm going down to the basement to do my laundry because I'm
As
that
you do.
much fun. You know, do it sometime. And I'm walking down a flight and a half of stairs with no landing in the oldest dorm on campus. And you have to walk out of the main building and into this like fire stairwell basically to get down there. And the door closed. It was one of those big metal doors. And as soon as it did, I could feel the energy around me change. And if you've ever been in the room with a ghost, you know what I'm talking about. Everything feels electric. You can feel that static. I knew something was manifesting. I did not know what it was. I was standing at the top of the stairs and I felt these 2 little hands on the back of my legs and she pushed me forward. I fell about a third of a way down the stairs, grabbed the banister, dropped my laundry basket. It was a mess. And I caught myself and I sort of turned around and I was looking back up the stairs and I could see her standing there. And I suddenly knew what all these dreams were about. There was this little girl, the cutest kid I've ever seen, wearing this sort of rose colored nightdress, big dark eyes, and she was smiling at me. And it took a minute and I looked at her teeth and her smile, and they were everyone pointed like a little shark's, like little rows of shark teeth. And that is the moment that I know that my fight or flight response was broken. Because in that instant, I, for whatever reason, decided the best choice I could make was to run up the stairs towards her because I was going to grab her. I have absolutely no idea what I was going to do when I caught her, but I was going to catch her. So I get to the top of the stairs about the time that my brain catches up to me and says, "What are you doing? This is a really bad plan." And so I have this moment of sitting here like, "What just happened?" And I run back to my dorm room and I tell my roommate what just happened. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, those beads under your bed." And I was like, would have been great to know. Context is everything here. Would have been great. So then we had to take the beads out, get rid of them, and after that, that particular haunting stopped. But that is by far the most dramatic incident I've ever had with a
Right.
ghost.
And it's really weird because I spent 25 years in the emergency services.
Mhm.
I get a similar kind of question. What's the worst thing you've been to? And you can ask as many different firefighters or paramedics or whatever, and they will always tone it down because some of the stuff you see, you don't want to tell anybody. So you kind of make it all nice and cuddly and stuff, but you kind of give it that emphasis of being dark, but you don't tell them exactly,
Yeah.
because a lot of people just go, "Oh no, I can't cope with that," and just run off. So I can completely relate, kind of, to to what you've just been saying. But my first paranormal experience was at a cardiac arrest, and
Mhm. Oh,
I'd got a replacement crewmate, and I'm doing CPR, and he went, "Oh, you can stop because the spirit stood behind you, telling you that he's not coming back." And I'm like,
that's a bad sign.
"Yeah." So I'm like, "Okay, please tell him with all due respect, I need to carry on. It's my job." And
Hmm.
then afterwards, it's like, "Dude, you can't tell me that in the middle of a cardiac arrest."
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So things kind of moved on after that. But at what point did you decide that, number one, that you're going to start writing, and then we'll come on to some of the TV work afterwards? Because obviously, you have to do one thing before you do the other. So I'm assuming the writing came first. Would I be right or wrong? No,
No.
it's the opposite way around. Okay. That's it. Pick on me.
So
Go.
no, you're good. You are right. Something has to come first. And for me, it was college. I got my undergraduate degree in the study of voodoo and the paranormal history of the US at the turn of the century. So I literally went in and I was studying with a cross cultural emphasis on Egyptian religious ideology and how that impacted American thought and American ghost hunting, if you will. So I literally got my undergraduate and then my graduate degrees in the paranormal history of the US. There's not a lot of us that have any sort of academic background in the paranormal, so the academics led to the TV.
Right.
But the actual incident that led to the first TV show is the one I just shared with you. That particular ghost story happening is what led to that very first show.
Yeah.
And
I
then
can't.
writing started.
Okay. Yeah. I can't even say academical. It's too much of a big word for me, so I won't go there. so, so, what was the first TV opportunity that came along?
The first show that I did was a show on Sci-Fi Channel when it was still Sci-Fi, and
Back in the day.
way back in the day, yeah, that's an old one now, and it was called Sci-Fi Channel's School Spirits, and it was talking about all of these college-age kids and all of these hauntings that were happening essentially on college campuses around the country, and it was really wild because the group of people they ended up with on the show, I think I knew about half of them already, like, before the show started because we were all sort of on the circuit. We were all lecturing, we were all ghost hunting, and everybody knew somebody. So if you didn't know them, somebody else in this group knew them. You know what I mean? It's a very
Yeah,
small
yeah.
community.
So it's really interesting because, like you said, that you've got the academical background and not many people do. I love it on some of these TV shows where they go paranormal expert. It's all like, okay. What's your background, dude?
Mhm.
But you can technically say that you are because you've got the academical background.
I
Yeah,
do.
yeah, and I'm not an expert, but I've got some experience,
Mhm.
and there's a difference between having a lot of experience and actually having the academical background. Because I started when I first got into this over here. There's a company on the East Coast that do paranormal courses, and I did one on ghosts and hauntings. I did one on poltergeist. I did one on demonology. Yeah, because I wanted, if I'm going to talk to people about it, I need to have that background knowledge.
Mhm.
I don't have to know every single thing because you can research it, but I
Right.
needed to have a comfortable background. So if I went to somebody's location, I could explain the A's, B's, C's, and D's of what's going on. So one thing that I would like to ask you about is the reason why you're actually here. I saw you on Mysteries Decoded, and you were the let's call you the specialist for Lizzie Borden.
Yes. Yes, I was.
So for those people that don't know, can we have a bit of a chin wag about Lizzie Borden and what happened and how you got interested in that?
Absolutely. So my mother, as we've already established, is a fan of the paranormal to some experience. You know, she likes it, and I was sort of raised with Lizzie Borden shows and things like that. So it's always sort of fascinated me just the case around her and what happened, and how much documentation there is for this case, and how we don't have an official answer of what happened, even though I have my personal theory and everybody has their theory, you know. But you have all of these like fantastical TV shows that are going to sort of blow the thing up and make it, you know, crazier or more outrageous, more ostentatious if they can. But I think the crux of the story is two people ended up murdered in a very brutal way, and the only people in the house at the time were two women. So it's just a really odd story. And I don't know if you want to go to Lizzie Borden's story first or how I got for that show. Like
You're
how do you want to do
you're
that?
you're the guest. You tell me.
All right, sounds good. Uh
I I'm taking away the responsibility. Go for it.
let's go. Let's do
Yeah.
it. So that show came about in a very normal-ish way for me. Got in contact with a production company. They were asking about a couple of topics, Lizzie Borden being one of them. And eventually was like, "You wanna come out and do this?" And, of course, when they ask you that, you say, "Yes, absolutely, let's do that. Let's go."
Yeah.
And so we did, flew out to Fall River, Massachusetts, and we had about a week in the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, where we had the house essentially to ourselves. There were a few tours coming in and out here and there, but we had full run of the place. And, like, I knew what I was getting into, the basics of the story. You know, Andrew and Abby Borden being murdered with an axe in their home. The only people living there were their two daughters, their two adult spinster daughters, and their maid, and that being the entirety of the household. And everyone assumes that Lizzie, because she was the only one there aside from the maid, had to be the one to kill her parents. Everyone is convinced of this. I'm not so much, but that is sort of the story going in. And so I've been to a bunch of haunted houses. I've been to a bunch of haunted locations. I don't know what I was really expecting because this one has a lot of traffic through it, sort of like Waverly Hills does, just a lot of people, a lot of
Yeah.
beats, a lot of energy. So I go in here and I did not find what I expected because I'm going to Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast. I'm expecting to find Lizzie, and that's not who I found there. And that really threw me for a loop because the first entities I found there were not associated with the Borden case at all. They were the two little kids that were also related to the Bordens that had been drowned by their mother at the next house over. Those were the two first ghosts there. And if you've ever been on set, you are on set for hours. Like these are 18, 19, sometimes longer hour days. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. It's a lot of ghost hunting. It's just a lot of everything. So I had a lot of time to sort of spend with these children. And then the next entity I found was Abby Borden. And I've dealt with a lot at this point of inhuman spirits, and I know how they function and how they work. Abby isn't inhuman, but she works a lot the same way. She wanted to press her emotions out. She wanted you to feel her pain. She wanted you to be sympathetic with her. You know, it was incredibly odd. I have never met another human spirit that did that. It was incredibly uncomfortable, and she was a big domineering presence at that house. And of course, while we're here filming this, we're getting to talk to other experts, historians who have done nothing but study the Lizzie Borden case, stuff like that. And certain documents come up. And the one that will always stick with me was a account from that day where a witness said that when he arrived on property, he met Lizzie and her hair was clean, dry, and unmussed. That was the quote. And I think anybody who has long hair knows that if you are doing any sort of strenuous activity, it is not clean, it is not dry, and it is not unmussed. It doesn't matter what you're doing, it is going to be a mess. The
I
boarding
get that
house.
all the time.
Exactly. I knew you would understand. I knew it. But the Borden house did not have running water. There was nothing they could do. There was no way for her to clean up. And that, to my mind, is the best clue that she was not the one who physically did the murdering. And to me, I had an issue with her uncle, who was also staying there at the time but was not at the house at the time, because he ended up on a streetcar And he somehow remembered the first and last name of 7 different individuals who were on the streetcar with him, just passing through, but he knew their first and last name to be able to tell the cops, oh, yes, I was on this train with this person, this person, this person, this person, all the way down. First and last names, 7 individuals. He also left town real soon thereafter. So, to my mind, I do believe that he was the actual physical perpetrator, though I do believe both sisters were in on the plot because he was their maternal uncle, and there had been a fight between Mr. Borden and the uncle the night before. But I do believe that the girls wanted their stepmother killed, but not their father. So I believe that is why that's why Lizzie and her sister had such a dramatic reaction after the murder, like they were essentially put on opium afterwards to try and deal with laudanum, I guess, to deal with the emotional upheaval of that. So I believe their uncle took advantage of their situation and then took the scapegoat that Lizzie was.
And you mentioned at the beginning of that particular segment that you felt something different that you haven't felt before. How does that come across, like in reality to you? How does it feel different?
So most spirits, most human spirits, act like most people. They want to talk to you, they might want to touch you, they want to communicate. Abby Borden did not. She wanted to enfold. She wanted to press her emotions in. It literally felt like something was pressing hard, like all over my body, like it was trying to get in, like she was going to force it in. And then I ended up crying at one point because I physically could not stop the amount of just overwhelming sensation that was being presented by this entity. She had so much power and so much energy behind her because of the amount of attention and the amount of people that come through there, that she has figured out how to function much more like things that weren't people than an actual normal human entity.
If you had let her continue, what do you think would have happened?
I can act as a true medium, if you will, where they can speak through me. I do not share well. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable to do it, especially to do it where I don't have someone there that I trust could bring me back from that. But that's what would have happened. She would have been talking through me.
And do you think that's what she wanted?
Yes, I do believe that's exactly what she wanted.
Okay. And I just want to go back a little bit because you mentioned the 2 children that were drowned at the next house down.
Yes.
Why do you think they were at the Lizzie Borden house and not at the location of where they drowned?
So they were actually members of the Borden family as well. They are Borden relatives, so they would have known this house when they were alive. It's a slightly different time period. You're looking about a 20-year difference if memory serves. But they were aware of that house. They were aware of that people. But I believe that Abby Borden, the entity herself, because she wanted to be loved so much, she really wanted children to adore her the way that children do. And Lizzie and her sister did not. So I believe that these 2 children have become essentially surrogate children for Abby Borden.
And did you feel any love between the children and Abby, or did you feel like there was animosity? Did you kind of pick up on that at all?
I didn't feel any animosity between them. I have dealt with, like I said, the 2 child spirits in my home, and there's a definite animosity between them and their grandfather, but I didn't feel anything like that between Lizzie and the children, or Abby and the children. So I really do think that she finally has gotten what she wanted. She got 2 actual children, to her mind, that are hers at this point.
That makes perfect sense. And a fun fact about Massachusetts. So I'm from England originally. My hometown is Boston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it completely confuses all the North Americans. But the dudes that came across in the Mayflower started off in my hometown. Then they went to Holland for a year, and then they went across the pond. But we've actually got a little village just outside my hometown of Boston called New York. So we have road signs for Boston and New York.
Oh my.
Yeah, so just a little fun fact. So, out of all the other different locations that you've been filming, is there anywhere that you felt threatened or you didn't feel comfortable in what you were doing?
I have never been to a location that I refused to go into or had a very negative experience while I was filming. I've only actually come across one house in my entire life that had that sort of entity in it, and that was actually in Savannah, Georgia. And you could not pay me enough money in this world to go in that house. Whatever that entity is there, it does not like me, it does not want me there, and it has enough oomph behind it to make me believe that it is correct.
Because it's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of people would definitely go, "Oh, that's definitely demonic," or "That's definitely malevolent," or whatever. But I was speaking to somebody, and you know, for you to believe in demons, it's kind of the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
So, what is your belief or your understanding of negative energy or entities?
So let me preface this with saying that as I have gotten older and the more I deal in this, I generally deal specifically with inhuman spirits. Like that has sort of been where my bread and butter has been the last 15 years of my life. But I have a degree in anthropology and I come at things very much from an anthropological lens. And to me, we need to have a culturally relative or idea of cultural relativity with entities. You need to understand them as they understand themselves. So, as far as I'm concerned, we have to sort of look at it as the ghost would to understand what it is. In my mind, are there demons? Probably. But I believe that is a very narrow category that is describing a specific sort of inhuman spirit from the Middle East, and that is all. Like, those entities are from that area. Like, you're dealing with a jinn, a different sort of inhuman spirit from a different area. And then you've got the Fae in more Celtic areas. The same sort of idea. These can be good, these can be bad, they can be somewhere in between, but it is an inhuman entity that you might look at and misidentify as a demon here. But they're going to identify themselves as a Fae. Here in North America, puckwudgies, things of that nature. Again, a inhuman entity that can be malicious or malevolent even, but is not a demon because it is not culturally to itself a demon, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's funny that as soon as you mentioned inhuman entities, I thought I'm going to mention the Fae in a minute, and then we'll talk about the Fae. And what did you
Absolutely.
just do? You just come out and started talking about the Fae. But one thing that I find really amusing, let's say, is both of us have seen multiple TV shows where it's not exactly what it should be, and they go, "Oh my god, I've got a demon," and I always try and talk people down when they say that, to go, okay, whatever device you're using, the word demons come out. But how do you know that is what they are talking about? They could be calling you a demon because back in their day, we didn't have half this technology, all these flashy gadgets that people use.
Mhm.
They're calling you the demon for you doing that. There's not a demon, a spirit could be calling you, and people go, "Oh, I never thought about it that way."
Mhm.
But it's right. It's sort of
Absolutely.
like yeah. If we did back in the 1800s and the 1700s what we do now, we'd get burnt at the stake.
You're right.
Yeah, yeah,
Entirely so.
yeah, and
I
it's
get a lot of strange questions from people being like, "I think I have a demon." And as soon as those words come out of their mouth, I can be like, "Great. I've got great news for you. You don't." Because if you
yeah,
actually did, the statement would have been, "I have a demon." Because you cannot tell me that the malicious entities from the Middle East that may or may not have been transported elsewhere, if you had something that level of malicious coming after you, you would know it. There would be no question about it. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
think people just scare themselves when they don't understand what it is they are looking at or talking to.
and that's it. Oh, it's the unknown. It must be bad. It must be a demon. But I also diffuse certain subjects or conversations when people go, "I've been scratched." It must be a negative entity. So, and I've told this quite a few times, but if you and I are in a room and one of us has passed and the other one's still alive, and the one that's passed wants to communicate, the first thing you're going to do is call the name, if you know what the name is, or you're going to try to get their, you know, get their attention. If that doesn't work, you're going to raise your voice because that's what humans do. They will shout louder. If that doesn't work, you're going to reach your hand out and you're going to tap them because that's like, in a noisy crowd. Oh, Stephanie, I'm going to touch you. So I kind of tell people that just because you've got scratch, it could be that energy transference of a spirit wanting to get your attention, but it does not necessarily mean it's malevolent.
Yes. I have been scratched, I have been bitten, I've had my hair pulled, I've been pushed down a flight of stairs. And out of all of those out of all of those times, I can only think of one time that I would actually say it was a malicious or a malevolent entity. All of the others were trying to communicate what they wanted me to know, which was generally get out. But, you know.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that too, because the amount of people that go, "Do you want us to leave?" And if they get a positive answer, then they stay. Like, no,
Yes.
you have to respect.
Hmm.
You said, "Do you want me to leave?" And then you're ignoring them. So you're not going to get any further correspondence and communication with them as well.
Yep.
But yeah, I like to tell people that I've had two instances. One of them I got stroked down the side of the face, which I thought was absolutely amazing. I was in a freshly decorated room and you could smell the paint, so I knew that
Hmm.
there wasn't spiders and things. It was just like a nice little stroke down the face, and I was so happy. And then another one just before Christmas, I felt like I got my hand held, but if it had been a cobweb, it would have been taken out by my shoulder or my elbow.
Hmm.
But it just felt like, and it's like I'm happy that I'm experiencing that kind of incident because it means that I'm doing the right thing and I want to do it for the right reasons, if that kind of makes sense.
Absolutely. It's amazing what can happen. Especially when I was little, I couldn't tell the difference between them. But when I was slightly older, I ended up in New Orleans at a hotel. And there was this little girl that came up to me, and we were in this busy hotel lobby, and she was little thing. And she wanted to go across the lobby to where there's this little restaurant, and she's like, her family was in there. Well, I walk her across the lobby. She reached up and she grabbed my hand. And I walked her across the lobby to the little guy standing at the little stand, being like, hey, this little one, nobody there. But I'd felt her little hand in mine. And he's like, don't worry, happens all the time. And I just thought it was such a sweet thing because she didn't want anything but somebody to walk her across the lobby. She was scared to walk through it. And I just think it's such a sweet thing when they can reach out and such a small gesture can make a difference to,
Yeah,
those that are still hanging out.
yeah, and yeah, I'm the kind of person that if I go to an investigation, yeah, I'm polite. I say please. I say thank you. I don't antagonize. And I try to have a normal conversation. It's like, oh yeah, it's a Friday night. You're getting another bunch of people trying to communicate with you, which I
Mhm.
understand, and you try to put the ball in their court, kind of thing, of going, yes, I'm another one of those people, but I want to do it for the right reasons. Where there's a lot of people that just want to go out and get scared,
Yeah,
but then there's the other kind of people that want to go out and to kind of prove the existence, even though it's a nigh on impossible
yeah.
thing. But yeah, and I like to think myself that I'm in that kind of category.
Mhm.
So you mentioned a few minutes ago about that place that if I paid you $1 million, you wouldn't go in. But yeah, $1 million is a lot of money. So I'm sure you'd consider it at least.
Nope.
So, so out of all the shows and stuff like that, I know you've kind of mentioned this one thing that okay, 2 million. I could write you a check out right now. It's in Canadian, so you won't get 2 million US. It'll just be like
Perfect.
1,500. Do you kind of have favorites of a place that I don't want to say it, but you enjoyed yourself or the experience so much rather than the complete opposite where you won't go back for 2 million?
There's a lot of paranormal places that I like. I've done a lot of things, I've been to a lot of places, Uh, Lilydale is one of the ones that always sticks out to me. I've never been to a location that is so active and so welcoming all at once. And Lilydale is a spiritualist community in upstate New York, and it is just the most soft, welcoming energy, and the entities there are fabulous. I'm going back this year. I mean, like, it's sort of a week or a yearly thing now where we're just going up there to like just spend time basking in that energy with those people and those entities. It's really lovely to remember that ghosts aren't always creepy. It can
Yeah.
be fun to be scared, but it's also nice just to know you can go and just exist with it.
See, you mentioned upstate New York. We're only a couple of hours. Keep going. Keep going. Come, come over the border. Come and say
I
hi.
mean, Canada's always fun. Long drive, but very fun.
Hey, you make it a complete road trip.
It's true.
For funnily enough, we went to a place in New York State, a place called Casanova,
Hmm.
and there's a fantastic little hotel, whatever you want to call it, called the Brer Lock Inn. Don't know if you're familiar with it. Like, we loved that place. We there was three of us that went, and we rented the two most haunted rooms, and we're setting cameras up, and a cabinet door creaked open, and then we spent the next 40 minutes trying to debunk it, and we could not.
Hmm.
And we were there for 2 nights, and on the second night we'd finished for the night, and they've got some really absolutely gorgeous four-poster beds with the old blankets, and no duvets, no modern. It's all oldie worldy. And I'm laid in bed, and I'm in the bed by myself. So you kind of get comfortable as you normally do, and you feel that the blankets kind of settle. And after about 30 seconds, I felt a really heavy sensation of somebody sitting on the bed. I thought one of the other guys had come into the room. Opened my eyes, and I just saw this white, obviously an apparition or something, just going past the bed. And I was so excited. Most people go, "Oh my God, I'm leaving now." And I'm going, "Oh, that is so cool. Let me get my phone." And it's like, oh, it's gone.
Hmm.
And,
Yup.
yeah. And it's like, people think, like you mentioned earlier, that people think that ghosts and spirits are scary, but it's not always the case. And like you said, the little girl in the hotel lobby, it was such a sweet experience. So like, the wife's just saying, "Do you want a drink?" No, okay. Yeah. So, so out of all these locations, you've mentioned one already. How many different locations do you think you've been to?
Oh
Can you,
boy, like
I,
public locations?
I was going. Well, yeah, I can put my hands up as well to help if you like, if that helps.
Dozens, literally dozens. I've been to a bunch of very, very strange places. And part of that is when I travel, I generally aren't going on vacation to, go to Florida. I'm going to go to St. Augustine Lighthouse. I'm specifically going out and going to these haunted locations and seeing what I can find. Trans Allegheny, Waverly Hills, Bobby Mackey's, Whispers Estates, dozens, literally dozens, Brushy Mountain, just all these places. And I don't sort of pigeonhole myself into just the paranormal locations. I will a lot of times end up in places where there have been reports of cryptid activity as well, just to sort of see what kind of crossover there is between cryptid activity and the hauntings, and whether or not there is something there that the purely cryptid researchers might be overlooking.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I know you mentioned it right at the beginning of the show. But the amount of people that I've spoken to that I did not really get this, that there's a good amount of people that think that cryptids are actually on the supernatural spectrum.
Mhm.
They can maybe teleport, or they can, time shift, or and stuff like that. What's your theory?
I don't know that I have an overall theory. I've spent quite a bit of time in Land Between the Lakes, Dogman territory down there, and in Point Pleasant. And I feel like we have two very different sorts of phenomenon going on there. I am inclined to believe that whatever happened in Point Pleasant with the Mothman situation, the flap that happened around there, Indrid Cold, all of that, I'm inclined to believe there was something paranormal going on there. I don't necessarily believe that we had a flesh and blood creature running around there. I am not convinced that what's happening in Land Between the Lakes is not at least partially flesh and blood. I think there is probably some kind of animal running around down there. Whether it's a dog man or whether it is something else, that is another discussion.
And yeah, it's weird how we've been talking mostly about spirits and ghosts, but then you've got this other area where it kind of overlaps, but it doesn't. Like for the example that we've just given. But earlier when you mentioned about inhuman entities, and then we mentioned the Fae, and you stole my thunder. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah. So that's where it happens all the time. It's sort of like I have a set things, and what I'm asking is like, oh, you just asked that, okay. And so, have you had any experiences with the Fae, and if so, what?
Yes. They don't like me. That has been
Oh,
my experience with
what?
them.
Why is that, Stephanie? What have you done to them?
I legitimately don't know. But the one time I was in England, that seemed to be very apparent to me while I was there. But there was also some occurrences that happened in Ohio, of all places, that seemed to be Fae based on items that were brought from overseas to here, which is what makes me think that that's probably what it was. And they were not fans. They did not want me there. They were not going to speak to me. They just wanted to be gone. And I don't know why. I don't know what I've done to them. I don't know how I offended them, but they don't like me.
Probably because you talk funny, especially when
That's probably exactly
yeah,
what it
yeah,
is.
yeah. You come to England, you think you know the Queen's English, and you don't.
No, not at all. Not even remotely.
It's quite funny. Like, yeah, if ever I get any of my colleagues try and put on an English accent, it's like you sound like Dick Van Dyke. Please stop now.
It's
So
always a good sign.
yeah, so when you started writing, did you decide that you were going to concentrate on one particular subject to start off with and then it expanded? Because I know, looking at some of the books you've read, you've got your scary, what's the word I'm looking for, macabre, there you go, it's not scary, macabre, and you've got those volumes. But how did you decide what you was going to write about to start off with?
I started off with what I know. I started off with paranormal experiences that had happened to me, which is all well and good. But those are all things that I've experienced. They're all things I know about. They're all things that have happened. And there was no real novelty in it for me. And I wanted to know more about what came before. I am a historian. I've got a master's degree in public history and museum studies. I was trained on how to explain the past to the public and how to make those stories palatable and interesting. And so I wanted to look at stories from the past and events from the past that had been forgotten and bring them to a new audience and allow them to understand and experience those mysteries and that sort of little bit of thrill of terror safely.
Yeah.
So that's really what I've transitioned to at this point.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause it's quite funny because before Christmas, there's a friend of mine who decided that he wanted to start doing webinars for his company, his paranormal company. And he goes, I'd like you to be the first one. Okay. He went, you're from England. You know about Victorian ghost stories. Talk about that. I was like, what?
Really?
Yeah. And then he stole a picture from me and turned it into like Ebenezer Scrooge.
Oh
And I'm
no.
like, it's like, dude. It's like, yeah, thanks. Yeah. So, yeah, people just like throw you under that bus.
Yep.
Okay, so unfortunately, we are coming towards the end. Your cat has not made another appearance.
She has
Obviously,
not. She's gone off and laid down somewhere.
so like, I don't want to speak to that Englishman. He speaks funny. So, what's next on the agenda for Stephanie Bingham?
Working on a lecture schedule for this year, seeing where I'm going to be presenting, things like that. Possibly have something else coming out this year with any luck. So, may have more of that coming. But this year spent writing. That is my main goal this year is writing. So, lots of that and less TV unless something really interesting pops up.
Unless you get invited to Canada and do Ghosts of Canada. But
Absolutely. I'll absolutely do that one.
in the winter when
Yes,
it's minus 40.
I love the snow.
Great. We go skiing. I've never been skiing before. But okay, what is it? It's pizza and French fries. That's what you got to remember.
Yes.
Stephanie, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved talking to you. I was so excited to when you said yes, you'd come on. So I can't thank you enough. And I hope we can stay in touch and probably get you back for episode 2 when you've released what you can't tell me that you're going to be releasing. But for now, thank you very much, and you have a great rest of the evening.
You have a great evening, and thank you so much for having me.
Take care. Bye bye.